Welcome to Tech Talk with TDAfrica. I'm your host, Chidalu, and today we have an absolute powerhouse in the building. She is revolutionizing cross-border payments in Africa, making it easier for customers and businesses to transact seamlessly. With a career spanning global giants like Amazon, Shopify, Net-a-Porter, she took a bold leap into entrepreneurship, and it has paid off, tackling one of the biggest challenges in African commerce. The one, the only, Jess Anuna, CEO of Klasha.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
What an introduction.
Your journey has been absolutely incredible, from Amazon, Shopify, to then founding Klasha. What inspired you to take that leap into entrepreneurship, especially with a focus in Africa?
So I've always been quite entrepreneurial. This Klasha is actually my third business. My first business was when I was 19. I had an online fashion magazine called We sold advertising space to big retailers, and we did really well. Second business was in China. It was an FMCG wholesale company exporting FMCG goods for Power, Amazon, and eBay wholesalers. And that's when I started to get interested in what was happening in Africa. I was born and raised in the UK. I had never been to Nigeria as an adult, but when I came here, I was absolutely fascinated by the economy, how fast things were moving, and also the growing young population as well. So I thought, what could I do in Africa that could make a difference? Selfishly, I was also a shopaholic, so I wanted to be able to spend cross-border once I lived in Nigeria, and access to goods I was used to accessing in the different OECD economies that I lived in. So I thought if I could just make it easy for merchants and businesses to access global goods using the payment methods and currencies they had, it would be easy for them to join and remain in the global economy, and in turn allow these retailers to scale into Africa. So it was actually born out of a need of want, not out of a need of need. But it turned into something bigger than I could even imagine. And now I'm proud to say that we're really helping businesses in a transformative way access the goods that they want cross-border when they want.
And that is such a complex problem that you're solving. So what are some of the technological or logistical hurdles that you faced in starting Klasha and bringing it to what it is today?
Yeah, many. But I always say to everybody that, I love what we do and I love the problems that we solve. I think the biggest challenge was just figuring out the value chain. I don't think one fintech can do the entire value chain end to end. From collecting the payments to converting the payment from hard currency, from exotic currency to hard currency, to terminating the payment T+1 to 3. So I think it was, even till today, we're still figuring out how do we solidify and how do we really iron out the value chain from start to finish for our merchants. How do we move money faster, cheaper, more compliantly, to ensure that we're terminating these payments quickly and our customers getting the most value. So I think the biggest challenge we still face today is just, having operational excellence across the entire value chain from start to finish. And then I think, another level down would be regulatory compliance. We're operating in 7 African countries today, and the regulatory landscape is extremely fragmented, and that's probably what keeps me up at night more. I wouldn't even call myself a CEO, I would call myself a chief compliance officer, just trying to untangle the web of what we can do, where we can do, because a lot of what we do isn't defined yet because of the nascency of the industry that we're working in.
That's super interesting, because I was going to ask, how do you manage all the different nuances in all the different countries?
It is extremely tough. And I would say, as a CEO, I'm very hands-on with all the different countries and all the different licenses. Just today I was on a call with a central bank in East Africa about acquiring our PSP license there. So it really takes us understanding the landscape and really, being smart with which licenses we acquire in order to do the business that we do. Our goal is not to be in every single African country. We care about the giants of Africa, where the population size and the GDP per capita is at its peak. And, ultimately that's what's led us to decide, on the countries that we're currently operating in. And the main countries we're in today is Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Tanzania, Uganda, and Zambia.
Interesting. And I wanted to touch on, one of the companies that you mentioned you founded, Restock China. How do you think the e-commerce space has changed from when you started your career till now?
In a huge way. And I think, during COVID is when we saw, an absolute shift in e-commerce, not only in the global north, but also in the global south. I've been very privileged enough to live in China. I moved there when I was 21 years old. I founded a company. I went to university there. And I was able to really see how quickly they use technology to galvanize and grow the economy in a span of 30 years. And they've done that through technology, through e-commerce specifically. And I think just understanding how they've used technology to move the economy forward, specifically in e-commerce, has really opened my eyes to what could be here in Africa. Mm-hmm. So I think probably what has changed is the creativity around how to get goods to people, how quickly. I think in Africa, we're becoming more sophisticated and more demanding. And I think retailers have had to pivot to ensure that, we're getting delivery in 1 to 3 days. We're not having to wait 2 weeks or 4 weeks. We're getting, diversity of payment method, whereas before we may just get card, for example. Now we're seeing M-Pesa, bank transfer, USSD. So I think that the industry is trying to keep up. I think that they should be keeping up with what is going on in Africa. What I'm seeing is just more creativity around providing better value and better services to the African consumer.
So you've lived and worked in London, China, San Francisco, and learned Mandarin along the way. So how has that global perspective helped in your businesses, not just in Nigeria, but across Africa?
So yeah, you're right. I have lived in many countries, I think about 5 now, including Nigeria, and this is my last stop, hopefully. I've been very intentional in living in different places very young. So I left the UK when I was 21, but prior to that I was living in France. And I've been very intentional in that because I wanted a global perspective on how the world operates. I didn't want a myopic view of how the UK operates or OECD economies operate. I wanted to see how the real world operates, especially in emerging markets. So I've been very conscious to take business opportunities in places that could far, accelerate my cognition on what it means to do business, what it means to operate at scale and at excellence. And living in China, honestly, was the best preparation, the best MBA that I could have done to prepare me for Nigeria, because this is the harshest business environment I've ever operated in. It's extremely aggressive, it's extremely fast moving, but it's also one of the most exciting, diverse places I've ever lived and worked in. So I think, living and working in places like China and Shanghai specifically, you really just understand what it means to operate at a speed that far excels, anything that you've experienced in the West. The West, US, UK really think that they're at the top of, technology and I guess society operating in a certain way of optimism. But when you get to places like China, where their society thrives on excellence, it thrives on speed, it thrives on innovation, it really does, give you the tools and embeds in your brain, new ideas that you could bring to places like Nigeria to help, further advance the economy here. And I always say that if I didn't live in China, I don't think I could actually, survive in an environment like this that is extremely harsh, it's bullish. But I'm really proud of what I've learned in China and been able to 10x that here in Nigeria.
And I know, of course, you're Nigerian, obviously, but a lot of people always talk about that untapped potential of the African market, especially in tech. Was that the reason why you moved back into the Nigerian markets, and again, not just the Nigerian market, but across the different countries?
Absolutely. We know that the fastest growth happens where there's a lack of development. That's just basic economics. And I wanted to be in an environment that could help me move faster than I could ever move before. And Klasha is 3.5 years old right now. And I don't think I could do what I did in the UK, do what I did in Nigeria in the UK, for example, just because of how developed it was. So I'm always looking for developing economies to scale into, to move fast, to get to critical mass. We're always looking at our unit economics at Klasha. And, our unit economics are great because of the environment that we're working in now. So we're always looking at critical mass, always looking at our unit economics. And I think we're always looking at how to get to economies of scale as well. And I think that can only be done in a developing market like Nigeria. It's a very unique market. And yes, I came here because of how quickly I knew I could move in business compared to the other economies that I was working in previously.
And you mentioned honing in on certain developing countries. So is this a Jess, idea, or do you have a research team behind you that is, analyzing the different countries, looking to see what the potential is in the markets? Or is this something that you shoulder as the CEO?
I wish we were that sophisticated that we had a research team, but we're still very much so a startup. So it is me, my head of finance helps me as well, and parts of my operations team. We look at, just from a macroeconomic standpoint, which countries are doing well, who has the youngest population, what payment methods are available, and which countries can we acquire licenses in quicker as well. So there is a bit of an analysis done at a high level. But I think in fintech, there are just key countries that you must scale into to be able to, capture the market, such as Nigeria, Egypt, South Africa, Ghana, and Kenya.
Interesting. And Klasha's mission is simplifying payments. As the CEO, I'm sure you love talking about your favorite product that you've developed. Can you let us know what that product is and tell us a bit about it?
Yeah, my favorite product is one we've launched recently, actually, called Pay to China, which allows instant payments into China from Nigeria. So all you have to do is go on our website or go on our app, you upload the Naira or you fund your wallet with Naira, and that payment instantly gets sent to China in Alipay or WeChat or into bank accounts. We're the only fintech right now that I know in Nigeria, dare I say Africa, that has that capability.
Wow.
And I think that just given the fact that China's Africa's biggest trading partner, it's been very crucial for us to be at the forefront of that innovation. Klasha's specialty is cross-border B2B payments between Africa and Asia, more specifically China. And I think that, we're walking our talk. We've developed this product, and we're really proud of how far it's come today.
So is that Pay to China born out of, the relationship you had already developed while you were in China? And are you planning on doing or replicating that same sort of model with other countries?
No, so Pay to China, came about just as of last year. I spend a lot of time still in China now, being the CEO and of course being based in Nigeria, but it's important I stay close to what is going on there. So that was born out of a partnership that we were able to garner during one of my trips in China. That's how it came about.
So as someone recognized as a Forbes 30 under 30 and recently the ECOWAS Youth Ambassador, what role do you think young people play in driving technology?
I can't even stress enough, how we adopt technology faster than any other continent in the world. The young people here in Africa, 50% of the population in Nigeria under 30, the average age is 19. So I think that, we're seeing with Gen Zs, can we even call millennials young anymore? I'm in that category. So, but with Gen Z specifically, they're adopting technology at rates that we can't even keep up with. And I think that we're looking to them to say, look, what is it that you guys need to make your lives easier from a financial inclusion standpoint? What can we develop for you? And I think that keeping up with what the young generation are doing, could really attest to the success of any fintech right now. I think that as the young population become more sophisticated, the purchasing power increases, us as fintechs need to be able to adapt and pivot and create solutions for them as well.
Amazing. And you touched on the fact that, Klasha is still very young. You're working with a small team that's, running all these. My question is, how do you juggle the whole big picture with the day-to-day operations?
That's a very good question. If I'm being candid, it is extremely difficult. I don't think we found the rhythm, or I found the rhythm of having the perfect balance, because there's a lot of day-to-day, there's a lot of nitty-gritty, there's a lot of merchants even calling me on a day-to-day basis saying what's going on with this transaction, or I want to send money here, or this and that, and then I have to deal with central banks, and creating strategies to ensure that we're compliant across the board. So it is incredibly tough. I don't think I've perfected it. It's one of my goals for this year to kind of get out of the weeds a little bit more, and really focus on the strategy. But I think that any CEO that can perfect that is probably doing an amazing job. But especially in Nigeria, where things are not as straightforward or organized, should I say, as other economies, you have to still be in the nitty-gritty and the weeds of things to get things done. So it is incredibly hard, and I haven't found that balance yet.
And I guess my next question is, if you haven't found the balance within the work life, how do you then balance, the personal life? How do you unwind after taking on the world as Jess Anuna, CEO of Klasha?
I do find time to unwind. Previously I didn't have a work-life balance, but I learned the best CEOs do have a work-life balance, and I'm striving to become the best CEO I can. And I know that if I'm not good, mentally, physically, emotionally, my company will never be good. So, I have a diverse range of interests. Egyptology is one of them.
What's that, please?
Just, I love to learn about ancient Egypt, about what happened, all the different kings. I'm continuously going on different trips and, watching different programs to educate myself. I love to learn new languages. I love to learn about different cultures, especially border culture. I love to learn about how different people live on the borders of different countries and how those two cultures, synergize. What else do I love? I love traveling. I still love shopping, although I'm not shopping as much. I'm currently in the midst of preparing to climb up Mount Kilimanjaro.
Oh, wow.
In October.
Amazing.
So I need to start training for that.
How's the prep going? Have you started?
It's just started.
Okay.
I'm going in October, and I'm just starting to, figure out what kind of trails I want to go on or hikes. But I always want to push myself to the edge of my mental capacity or emotional capacity to really push me to become the best version of myself that I can be. And I have to take risk and put myself out of my comfort zone. Climbing up a mountain is not something I'm comfortable with.
Honestly, I was going to say, is this something that you usually do? Are you a hiker?
Absolutely
Or you
not.
woke up one morning and you know what? That's a goal I'm going to tackle.
Yeah, I mean, I like to tackle one big goal a year. And I think like reaching the highest peak of Africa is significant. I feel extremely connected to Africa. And I think reaching the top of that would not only be an achievement for me, but, just something I can, tell my kids about one day and just, and even if I go by myself, I am going by myself right now, but it's just something that I think could really, help push me to the edge of, the character that I think I have now, maybe unlock different sides of me that I have not experienced before. And I'm looking forward to that mental and physical challenge.
That is a word. And I think that's the one thing I'm going to take away, having one big goal every year that you're working toward. Jess, we hear that you are a Mandarin speaker. I know you said you love learning new languages. We would love if you could introduce yourself to the camera and tell the people to follow Tech Talk with TDAfrica in Mandarin.
你们好，我叫 Jessica，请关注 Tech Talk with TDAfrica.
Thank you so much, Jess, for joining us today. But before we end, I hope you will indulge me. I like to play table talk with my guests,
sure.
just to get a bit more comfortable with them and get to know them a little bit better. So you just pick a card and then read it off and answer the question.
Okay, let's pick a card. Did moving back to Nigeria change your life and how? Any regrets? Wow.
That's a good question.
Of course, yes, it changed my life for the better. Moving back to Nigeria really showed me what I think happiness looks like. It's extremely tough society to operate in, but it's filled with joy. There's a lot of happy people here, people that are happy with little. And I think that really kind of moving here exposed me to how different kinds of people live and how my people live as well. So yes, moving back changed my life. Any regrets? Absolutely not. I think I'm here for the long
I love
run.
that. I love that. And if you don't mind doing one more.
Yeah, sure. Which rule do you have for yourself that you will never break? That's a good question. I'm extremely disciplined when it comes to health, not necessarily fitness, but health. So I think maybe intermittent fasting is something that I've been doing for about 10 years now.
Really?
Eating between a certain time. So I think that's a rule that I'd probably never really break.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That is good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jess, for joining us today. And thank you guys for joining us to have the day that you deserve. Thank you.
Empowering Africa, we are Simba, Africa.